Today's guest is a singer-songwriter whose voice and melodies help define one of the brightest moments in British pop. Nick Heyward first came to fame as the frontman and principal songwriter of Haircut 100, the band behind such hits as Favourite Shirts, Boy Meets Girl, Love Plus One, and Fantastic Day. Now, after tensions with the bassist Les Nemes, Nick left and he started what was really a rich solo career. The first success was the album North of a Miracle, and that's been celebrated with a special 40th anniversary deluxe reissue. Now, in a remarkable full circle moment, time and music have brought Nick and Les back together with Graham to create Boxing the Compass, Haircut 100's first new album in over 40 years. Of course, it captures that youthful energy that made them so loved, while reflecting the maturity of artists with decades of experience behind them. Nick Heyward, welcome. I always start this podcast with really the same question about the childhood, when you were growing up, what sort of music you listened to in your household, what sort of music your parents played.
Dad was jazz, big band, Stan Kenton, Woody Herman, Count Basie, Oscar Peterson. Not that it was a big band, but just jazz, pure jazz, really. And then we used to go to the Bull's Head in Barnes on the river, West London, just over from Hammersmith, over the Hammersmith Bridge, and then turn right. And then you go down to this glorious pub where Alan Price still plays to this day. And the family have been going there for years. And so it was Bill Lesage, Tony Lee Trio, and Dick Morrissey, and just great. Brian Spring on drums, fantastic musicians.
Did you go
So
as a
I
family
grew
to
up.
your first gig? Because you went to this amazing gig, didn't you, with Oscar Peterson, with, just sort of
Yeah,
massive names.
yeah. Count Basie, Ray Charles, and Oscar Peterson. That was my first gig in Hammersmith Odeon,
What do you remember
and
about
then
it?
I remember being right at the back, at the top, and everybody looking really tiny. But there was this sound coming off the stage, and because it was in the house, and now I was seeing it, hearing it live. That was that was the magic, because records and the recording of it was, but it was very at home. But in this environment with all these people, it brought an extra sense, an extra energy to it, which must have affected me, because I just remember feeling excited, really, really excited to see this happening. And I remember, well, I remember every artist. I remember how cool Count Basie was, and how the orchestra didn't sound like anything I was listening to on the television. I heard sounds like this, but there was an authenticity about American artists that you didn't really get. I mean, you got the sound of it, but you didn't get this. It sounded like it, when you're seeing the music where it came from, it resonates with you, because that's the authenticity right there. So, I mean, I was watching people that were born in the 1800s. These were, I mean, Count Basie, was he born around about 18? I don't know if I have to look that up, but um, and so these were people that lived that life. The music that they were making was a reflection of their time. So, and imagine how they'd trained as well, and how natural musicians they were, but also how gifted they were. So you're seeing people at the top of their game, and they're all around that period. My God, I'm so lucky to have witnessed that.
I mean, it's also
You
about
know,
their
I took
experiences, isn't it? Because their experiences in life are also on that stage, very different
Yeah.
experiences, of course. And the experience of going to a gig, what I have as a non-musician, as not someone who's, in front of the crowd, as a
Mm,
non-musician, is there is a moment where I'm in, where there's
mm.
this connection. Did you feel that, or when was the first time you felt that?
Yeah, because they were just doing what they loved doing and sharing that. That's that's what I was. That's what it was. It wasn't. There wasn't any kind of. They were. This wasn't their career choice. the music they were making to be famous. This was the music that they loved, that they lived and breathed, that there was their life. There was a reflection of their life, their art at the time. And like you said, their experiences growing up as people, it would have been all on that stage. When I was listening to, uh, when you now know about the history of like Ray Charles's history, and to know that I was watching that, and to read a bit about Count Basie more, where his life story. I mean, I watched the Netflix documentary on it and stuff. It's just amazing, and to think that I witnessed that, I still sometimes just can't believe it. Some of the things that I've witnessed in life, and feel very, very lucky to have done that. I mean, just growing up in the '60s is feel lucky enough to have witnessed that. The birth of the Beatles and stuff, and just hearing it firsthand, and even the Carpenters through mum. That was it. I was listening to it in real time. This band called the Carpenters that had this music that was Burt Bacharach songs, and witnessing Burt Bacharach and hearing those songs for the first time in real time, and Monty Python and everything that was going on, in real time, first time, the whole country in solidarity, loving one thing, like all getting around the telly to see that giant foot just come down, you know, da, 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 and just being influenced by it, and everybody at school going completely fucking nuts. The humor just changed overnight. Suddenly, it was okay to be completely odd and right out of the not out the box, but out of the country, out of the planet, and into the universe. It was just changed comedy, I suppose. And so, watching that in real time, being influenced by it, that affects music too, and that changed lots.
How was creativity viewed at home? Was it valued? Because if I think of my parents, it was more essentially like, if it's better to get a job the way you earn money rather than go for a risk. How did your parents view creativity in that way?
Very encouraging. They knew the family wasn't the brightest sparks, so we weren't academics. So I grew up with that feeling that art was, and music, creativity. But as I got older, I realized that it was just music, really. It wasn't the arts as such. In fact, they were kind of quite anti the arts. Not anti it, but they were scared of it. So it wasn't like we went off to the theatre every weekend, or we didn't go around. We didn't particularly go to libraries and bookshops, and so I had to add that in myself.
That was
Yeah,
a
no,
class and generation thing, wasn't it? You know what I mean?
definitely. Yeah, definitely. So it was more like music was the passion, really. I mean, all of us, the whole family, my brother too. He was he was discovering rock music at that time. So, and I was discovering rock music too, but also all the influences in the family. Everybody was influencing each other. I mean, Mum really got into Rick Wakeman and Genesis and Yes through my brother. I know I got into the Carpenters through Mum. I got into jazz through Dad. I got into Pink Floyd and Led Zeppelin through Pete, and Montrose, and just rock. It was always, coming out of his bedroom, and then I was hearing it real time going on around as well. And but my first record that I bought was, I mean, I loved David Bowie because he was, you know, he was living in the area, so this was amazing. And I saw Sparks walking down the high street, and I'd been to see Sparks
Do you remember
play at
Sparks when they were
Croydon
first on
Field.
top of the pops? When I remember phoning up a
Everything.
friend and said, "Oh my God, Adolf Hitler's on top of the pops." So,
Yeah, there's a
so
bloke dressed
mad.
as Hitler.
Yeah,
Yeah.
this town ain't big
Um,
enough for the both of us. Yeah, brilliant. But David Bowie, of course, as you say, he was at Head Hall. And I talked to Tony Visconti, and one of the interesting things he said when he was there at Head Hall was that Bowie was almost performing, like he would go to the fridge to take a bottle of milk and he'd do a mime, on the way to the fridge. So it was almost like
Mm.
he was becoming the David Bowie that we knew and loved. Now, for me, David Bowie was also, he represented something else, because for me, he represented identity, for me, my sexual identity. But I think identity comes in for everyone when they
Hmm.
start to love an artist. Did music
Hmm.
represent, an identity, a group, to a belonging for you?
Yeah, it did, because I don't think we're at that age anyone fits. We don't really fit with what's going on. We're not, some of us are trying to fit, aren't we? And others are just kind of going, what is this? You've changed for school as it was. I mean, I know that it looked like some people were just breezing through life, just taking it like it was, but none of us were trained for this, really. I mean, we're conditioned for it, but just suddenly we're born and we're off. Okay, everything's happening. Okay, what would we do here? And sometimes it's just, what am I doing here? And you're acting, if you like. Sometimes it feels like, you're at school and you've got to act your age. You've got to act sensible. You can't. I mean, sometimes it felt ridiculous to be in chemistry class with the authority that was going on around. Our physics lessons were from they didn't seem to be. They seemed to be more like from the TV. Some sort of authoritarian country with this guy that he had this plank of wood with a nail on it, and Mr. Bond, and he was just like he ruled the class with a rod of iron. And so, most of us were just like kids, and we're kind of like thinking this was normal. I mean, nobody really knew about it as such. It was just like, okay, this is our physics teacher, and he kind of looks a bit like Mussolini, and he's acting like it. And if you get caught giggling or smiling or not focusing and concentrating, which for most of us who are maybe on the creative side and a bit dreamy anyway, and tend to sort of like just go like that and look at the window and think, God, I'm hungry. And I wonder if Gary's going to be in the playground, and I wonder if I'll be able to play football. And yeah, if just that lack of concentration, and this guy starts flinging at you with a plank of wood, this was your conditioning. So this is the norm. This is normal. So you can't tell me that you're not acting, because you're trying to actually act to survive in that classroom, when you really want to go, what the fuck is this? And who are you? And why are you so mental? I remember thinking that.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
interesting. I think a
Why
lot
are you
of,
like that?
yeah, exactly. A lot of pop stars are quite introspective when they're young or shy. And a lot of the drive that comes from, when you really want to do something comes from, the childhood and this feeling of maybe lack of value, or, like, or something else like Brian Wilson, when his father would shout out, you got a wrong note. So his perfectionist came from trying to
Mm,
impress his father, which stayed for his whole life. And I just wonder,
mm.
because you were quite introspective at school, weren't you? And did you also have a stutter?
Yeah, that was mainly, reading was not something I enjoyed, reading out loud. Um, I was trying to prepare 2 pages ahead of everyone, just because I knew that it was going to be difficult to speak, to read, and just one little tiny mistake, and there would be laughter, because these kids could suddenly release a bit of the tension in the class, that was there, and they had somebody else to sort of make the the joke, and so. I knew it was inevitable that that was going to happen. So it became a terrifying prospect. And sometimes I got through it. I don't know how I got through it, because actually I read quite well, rather well. And it's almost like my brain was going too fast for the words and for the situation. So, and it was really odd thing to become a singer, where you're not just reading, but you're singing words out loud.
Well, also making
And
yourself a central focus, because if you're the
yeah.
outsider in school,
Hmm.
It's almost like by making yourself the central focus, you're pushing yourself through it.
Yeah. Why do we do that? I mean, you hear it so many times now, don't you, from people that it was their worst nightmare and it's become their career. I mean, I was petrified when I was on the top of the pops for the first time. Kept not knowing why I was doing this, but I was doing it. And I think sometimes we're drawn like a moth to to the light, to the lamp in the butcher's. We're drawn to it. We know it's going to kill us, but we know that it's growth in some sort of way. Unconsciously, we know that the only way to grow is to die. Sometimes, like the only way out of depression and stroke suffering is to actually go into that suffering, because that's the door through. You can't just sit here and just go, I'm depressed, because you'll just be depressed and suffer. So the way in is the way out, and the way out is the way in. It's just seems to be the way. I mean, I have never grown through great things happening. It's
Uh,
always been the awful things where the growth has happened. So I think we're just drawn to grow, you know, to evolve. Just
yeah,
seems to be the
absolutely.
way. So maybe that's why. And it was a benefit, because that's why sometimes if anybody's being particularly they're on your tail, they're being nasty, I know that it's not going to affect. I mean, it doesn't feel good, but I know that it's going to be worse for those people than it is for me, because sometimes if any time I've done that with somebody, you only end up actually hurting yourself. So just know that you're covered on that. The universe actually works. It's
And
okay.
when you're creative and you're creating something, whether it's writing lyrics, it's performing, whatever you're doing, um, you are putting your pain somewhat in what you're doing. It might not be like right up front in the words, but it will be in there somewhere, won't it?
Yeah, there's an element of friction in there, isn't there, to get anything to happen, like to get fire out of a match, yeah, it needs to strike it somehow. And sometimes that sort of conflict helps. And I know that that's part of the creative process. So therefore, when it happens and when I am struggling and when there is a struggling atmosphere, it's not a bad thing. You will get through it as long as you keep going, and as long as you know that, you can just take the flack. You just take it, but don't take the blame. Just keep going through it, and you know that you'll get to the other end result, which is it's a good place. There's peace. There's peace at the end of the tunnel. There's peace when you get through. And how many times have people gone, that's a wrap on a film, and it's been ups and it's been downs, and you probably never got the budget, and but we're through it and we made it and we got this great film. Absolutely excellent. And how many times have you made some easy thing that's been really, really easy, and it's like great, and it's like, it's okay.
Yeah.
So sometimes there is that element of effort that comes into anything that actually brings results. And that's life. That is life. That creative energy. And sometimes things go really well. And it sounds like a contradiction to what I've just said, but when you're in a flow state as well, that's amazing. But you're not going to be in a flow state 24/7. It just doesn't happen. I'd love it to be. I'd love to be in a flow state 24/7. I've had times when it's just kind of, ooh, this is going on to the next day, and the next day it's been a week now, this flow state, maybe 2 weeks, but it's not like 24/7, every day, every night. I mean, it's nice to aspire to that, but it feels like more like perfectionism than anything to really try to be in a flow state 24/7 all the time. I think things go in waves, they go in cycles. We're on a kind of ballish kind of thing, floating through the universe. So a bit of perspective there. There isn't any real. There's no such thing really as territory, unless you're hunting, I suppose. But if you're not hunting, then maybe just personal space. There's that. But really, I don't know. The element of the element of flow state is wonderful when it's happening, but when it goes, know that it's going, and you're now experiencing a time of refill. You're refilling. It's like, okay, there's a bit of struggling coming. Maybe there's some growth coming here now. Right. Okay. Well, we're going to go through this. You're stuck for the moment for a very good reason. And you're just stuck. There you go. You know, Sometimes a
Well,
leaf gets stuck on the river, doesn't it?
well,
Is it meant to get stuck there or not meant to get stuck there?
yeah, no, that's a good point. When you met Les Nemes, what was your impression of him when you met, and what do you feel really connected to you as school friends?
Well, we didn't go to the same school. He went to a school in Croydon, so and Graham went to a school in Forest Hill, and I went to school in Beckenham. So it was all South London, and we we just got to know each other through people. It was through our friends, and I'd heard of because there wasn't many great bass players. There wasn't, and Les would probably say there wasn't many musicians. There wasn't many people that wrote their own songs even in the area. There wasn't somebody to play with. And if you want to join a band and you want to be with somebody who's doing their own stuff, you don't find somebody who's just a sort of a musician who's going to want to just play other people's songs. That wasn't the goal. The goal was the dream of being and starting a band and doing your own thing. So he probably heard about somebody that was doing that. And that's what I was doing in Beckenham. I was at that particular point, I'd seen something. I'd seen That'll Be the Day in Stardust. You know, I'd seen what it was like. That life looked really, really good. And all the music up until that point was where all the good feeling was, all the cobbly wobbles. That was where all the magic was. There wasn't any magic at school. I mean, that was grit. That was the stuff. That was what was off-putting. I wish it wasn't because I'd have learned so much. Yeah, I'd love to have learned about physics and chemistry and English more and stuff, but it was more just about learning to survive the day without getting beaten up. So, music just seemed like a beautiful, glorious, fun thing to do, the lifestyle, and going to the cinema with my nan and watching Jungle Book, this Technicolor world filled with music. It was always music, music. As soon as you put music on anything, it's a bit like a picture. I felt like as soon as I saw type that went over a picture, it just came alive to me. So music was the same thing, music and pictures, and I remember seeing The Graduate as well. That had a huge influence. But then that had that music again. It was Simon and Garfunkel, and then it was cool. It was American Graffiti. There was all these films, and they all had music, great music in, and and so why wouldn't I want to do that? And yet, when I heard, say, like T-Rex coming out of my brother's room, and it's just like, oh, Metal Guru, Ride a White Swan, all these songs coming out for the purple room, which was like purple carpet and WEM amplification, and you know, my brother was just like candles, and there was hippiedom going on in that bedroom there, and he was just playing Pink Floyd all the time, and it was just, yeah, I didn't think I want to get in a band and play that. It was just inspiring to do that, and then when punk happened, um, it was around the time that Les and I met. So that was everybody was starting bands, and I'd been starting bands since school, um, and and just writing songs, I suppose. I mean, yeah, I just picked up a guitar and thought, okay, uh, first chord, and that sounds like something. And then if I put another chord there, that sounds like something, but it doesn't sound like anything actually. That sounds, I can do that. So I'm doing that. G, C, G, C, G, C, G, playing it over and over and over. Oh, I don't think I've heard anything. You're kind of talking to yourself as you're going. I don't think I've heard anybody. I don't think I've heard anything like that before. Oh, it's nice. And I wrote this song called Ducks that was just like, and I imagined ducks swimming and dum 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 dum. So I had that for ages, and I kept trying to put something else in it. And that became then when I was trying to sing and play at the same time, when Les and I we didn't know any singers. Don't think there wasn't many singers. They were rare. So I was learning to sing and play at the same time because I was singing these things. So, okay, but I hadn't ever thought about being a singer because that would have been my worst nightmare, right? Stuttering and being shy and not being a front man, not being like Freddie Mercury, because I looked at Freddie Mercury and I thought, okay, that's the front man. I'm not that. But then when punk came out, I looked at, say, Hugh Cornwall or Joe Strummer, and I thought, well, that's kind of, and then Andy Partridge came along, and it's like, yeah, okay, I can be that. I've kind of got the hair a bit as well. And so you think, yeah, you can do that. And Paul Weller comes along, and you just go, oh, yeah, I've got to go and get those shoes. So you go into Shelley's shoe shop and you get the shoes, and you're wearing the magic Paul Weller shoes, and you're thinking, for a week you probably just pogoed around my bedroom trying to be Paul Weller in the jam shoes and thinking this is great to the record, and but it's not really you. You're just honing your identity, aren't you? You're just being people and trying it on different things. You still don't really know why you're doing this and why you're even here, but you're just doing it anyway, and you love it. You're drawn to things that you love. So I was drawn to all this stuff, and this song, Ducks, I had these chords, and I was playing them in my brown wall in my bedroom, and they're going, there's a green, na, 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 na. Oh, I think I've got an end. A new chord came in, which was D, which was quite complicated. D comes in, and then I thought, okay, D, C, G, go back to the ones I know. Oh, I got something going there. And that was the beginnings of Fantastic Day. And I just kept singing Fantastic Day over and over again and thinking, what am I singing there? Every time I go to the wall, it's like I'm singing It's a Fantastic Day.
Now, don't go away. There's more of Nick Heyward coming up. Just time for me to ask you to please like, subscribe, comment, and don't forget to check out the website, popthehistorymakers.com, where you'll find, I think now it's something like 120, 140 interviews. One thing that really interests me about Haircut 100, when it came out, and I loved Haircut 100, and I loved XCC, and I loved Blue Rondo a la Turk. You remember Clacto Wiedenstein or whatever it's Wiedenstein, I don't know, me and Mr. Sanchez, and then chant number one, Spandau Ballet, and in a way, it sort of fitted into that mold of everything I liked at the time.
Same here. It was all just going Technicolor. London was going Technicolor. The Beat Route. The Beat Route was the place to go. I mean, that's where chant number one, I think the video was done there. And, we'd been to the Beat Route. And so we'd experienced living that video that they'd filmed. We'd been in there when it was just sweat and everybody dancing and everybody looking great. And it's the weekend. And here are all like-minded people. Out of all of the suburbs, we'd all come to London to be in this one place. We're all probably going off to the up all night. We're all probably going off to have a bagel. We're all just going back to somebody's house. I think that went back to lots of times, and there was Gary, Martin, and Steve, Norman, and everyone there, and just hanging out. And so we were just like-minded people doing the things we loved, and we all brought up on similar music: T-Rex, Bowie, jazz, funk. We'd all danced and to the same records. We'd all probably listened to British Hustle millions of times, and we'd all danced to Love Hangover by Diana Ross at some either club or discotheque. I mean, I remember dancing and feeling Hamilton Bahama Disco Stomp. That was like a really important record in my mate Austin and I's world, it seemed. You'd go to a school disco or just a disco, the one in Beckenham. I've got such a vivid memory of that moment with disco stomp for everybody on and everybody in bowling shirts. Do you remember bowling
God,
shirts
yeah.
and like plastic shoes and stuff and wedges and things? Probably around about 76, maybe. And my, and I hadn't quite got my look right then. I think it was because I was really into Down Down and Quo at that particular point. That for me was that intro is still a moment if I listen to Down Down. So I was in triple denim at that particular point with long blonde hair like this. And I met this girl that night and she had, you know, blonde wavy hair, it looked like a mermaid. And then when we started seeing each other, she was into Bowie, huge into Bowie, and was going with every change. So when Station to Station came out, that shifted everybody. Suddenly, everyone was getting their hair cut. It's like that's it. You cannot do long hair anymore. There has to be style. And she went full Purdy, and I went Bowie. I had to go like that. I found the hairdressers that was chocolate brown outside, probably called Shapes or something like that. And I think it was in Lewisham or somewhere near Lady Well swimming bars, because that route to London from Beckenham became the Rat Run. That was the place. That was Mecca. You'd follow that to. That was where you needed to go. Back then. And it was getting the first time I did it barefoot. It was in the summer. I probably, the hot summer around the 77,
It was 76, I think, wasn't it? 76, 77?
77,
Yeah,
76.
yeah.
Yeah. And did it barefoot. And I had to keep going into the shade to, yeah, to cool down. Yeah. But I didn't have enough money for the bus. No, who added money in those days? I mean, it's only 1.5 pence, but I didn't have 1.5 pence.
I just want to move on to Haircut 100 success because it wasn't only immense, it was very quick. Can anyone be prepared for that sort of jump?
Um, no, none of us were prepared. It's what we wanted. It's what we dreamt of. It's what we're all, heading towards. Um, but when it happened, it's so weird. Steve, it's the weirdest thing. It was the weirdest thing. And I have no idea what it's like now. But in 1981, it was, I mean, it was probably just what duality is. It was both, you know, scary and gorgeous, thrilling, petrifying, all those things all at once. And you're trying to process it and get it together. And I was so elated, so happy that, and you also get that feeling like, you'd wished for this. And so it was meant to be, and I've since discovered that there's no such thing as time. So it was just happening. It was happening, and I can relive it now, and I remember it completely. And I remember Top of the Pops and the cameras coming in, and just how cold it was, and
Did you black it out?
13 million. Well, again, it's that thing like being in the physics class. It's kind of like you're acting a bit, and you don't want to be like that because since then you discover authenticity and being yourself, and you're relaxed with who you are beyond your conditioned self. So you're just comfortable. So I can actually say clearly that I was acting because I just wanted to really just stop it and say, uh, fuck, what, what? Wow, But it's almost like I would imagine it's like you've got when you see a Woody Allen film, or when you did see a Woody Allen film, and everybody, or a Mike Leigh film, and everybody in it is playing a role. And once they know that they've got the part in the new Mike Leigh film, they just go, "Oh, it's almost." You've seen the Mike Leigh films, you've seen the Woody Allen films, so you kind of like think, "Well, I wonder what part I'm going to play." And then when you get into it, you can't help it. You're influenced by all the things that have gone before. Like if you see somebody on "I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here" now, there's roles to play, and they play it, and they're picked to play that role. And have you ever found yourself just playing a role and you go, oh, like when I'm in a band, it's a bit like I'm a front man. Okay, well, there's a job to do that. Okay, there's something to do here, and you're slightly playing a role. And that's okay, because it's just playfulness, isn't it? But when you're actually just doing it, there's a part of you that feels like you're acting when you're younger, because you're trying to behave yourself in class. You're trying to behave yourself on Top of the Pops. You've seen Top of the Pops. You've seen these people on there. You've seen Rod Stewart going through all those classic Maggie May appearances. You've seen Bowie. You've seen everybody doing this. You've seen Pan's People. You've seen them doing this, and you're on that program, and the camera's coming in, and you go, "Can I hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on? Is this really happening? Is this really?" But it's happening, and the camera's zooming in, and the guy joked because he's obviously said it to lots of people who look petrified on the camera, saying, "Don't worry, it's only 23 million people." And it's like 23 million people. I said, "Well, what do I do? What do I?" He said, "Well, you'll know when the light goes on. You'll know when the light goes on. That's when the camera's on you. Just So you just go, okay. So you've just learned that. So follow the camera when the light goes on. Okay. Ah, light's going on. Yeah. Oh, that's fuck. That's not a good angle. Hold on. Let's get rid. Ah, there's a light on there. Okay, this is not good. Oh no, my gap in my teeth. Keep your mouth closed, Nick. Keep your mouth closed. 4 minutes scale.
Fame and success and being in the public eye compounds any sensitivities, any feelings you have of insecurity, maybe things like that. I think it can
Oh
compound things,
yeah.
and it compounds the problems in relationships, particularly
Mhm.
in a band.
Yeah, and in a family. I mean, all our families were never the same. All our friends, everything changed. Well, I suppose we changed. Everything changed. Well, you don't change, but yeah, it's like suddenly just having a completely new perspective and stuff, and everybody having a different perspective, and people just assuming. I mean, even now, I can go on a tour, um, post a few things about the tour's going great, and people just go, "Well, that's all right for him. Look at him out there, having a great time on his tour and doing really well, are we?" And it's like, and you're out there trying to make it work. It's hard work. No one's getting paid, but you're just trying to make it look grand. What are you going to post? This is a break-even tour. What are you going to post? Like, this is really hard work. I didn't sleep last night. Maybe you can do that. You know, what are you going to, but what are you going to post? So you post, the tour's going fantastic. And it is, because you know that at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about being able for you to get on that stage for that particular time and deliver those songs to the people. That's their songs. They grew up with these songs. The reason that they're coming is because it's their songs. And all your stuff doesn't mean anything. These are the people that you play. and you want to play them the best you possibly can, just like Count Basie did, just like Ray Charles did, and Oscar Peterson. They played those songs that way. I would imagine Ray Charles probably had a very complicated period around that particular time. He seemed to be in history the most complicated guy on that stage at that time, I've since discovered. So, you know, all that aside, he was on there and just doing that stuff. And my father was sitting in the audience, just completely his head blown off that he was actually witnessing this. And there was a young kid there going, I wouldn't mind being on that stage one day, or it looks petrifying on that stage, or but just what maybe wasn't even thinking. Maybe was thinking about school. Who knows? Maybe I was thinking about Mr. Bond and his plank of wood. But the thing is, uh, it was an influence. And what? How many years later? This was 10, 11 years later. I was on that stage and singing. We were singing and we were playing, and Pete Townsend was in the audience. I could not have predicted that. I would have not have never have said that when I was watching Top of the Pops, and or when I was in my bedroom listening to the Who live at Leeds, and just it completely blowing my head off. I thought this was everything about music, you know. And when I was listening to Pinball Wizard and seeing Elton John in those enormous Dr. Martens on stage, being the Pinball Wizard, and Rosa Daltrey with his eyes, just kind of like, you know. And then I'd done that thing. I'd gone into the mirror and just like, how'd you get those eyes, like Rosa Daltrey's eyes? You know, do you think I could put some baked beans in the bath? You know, do you think mum and dad wouldn't mind some beans going, you know, I'll probably kill me. No, I wouldn't like it. Anyway, I haven't got enough money to get loads of beans right now, but one day I'm going to get some beans and put them in the bath. But, you know, just dreams.
People come to a show and they want to hear the hits, and that's, often what you deliver. It's a generalization, but when you've had a long career, which you've had, and a long solo career, and obviously we're going to come to, coming back to Haircut 100, but this long solo career was a career of massive personal development and change through the music. And I think, I just want to sort of take a moment and go through things because, the first album was pop. It was sort of a reflection of Haircut 100, but as Nick Heyward, and then it became more emotional when we get into sort of the mid to late 80s with Postcards from Home and I Love You Avenue. And then there was another change with sort of introspective and acoustic type idea. And then when we get to the late 90s, it's more experimental. And it feels like, that you end up being this veteran songwriter in a way, and a much sort of more confident person. Do you think you could have become that if you'd done everything at the height of the public fame? Do you see what I mean? If that massive public fame had continued through Haircut 100, do you think you would be the same person today? Or do you think it took the idea that you had to develop on your own and be allowed to risk and change and do things because you weren't at the height of fame?
Yeah, I've thought about that. I thought, why has it been such a struggle? Because I didn't seem to be ever in a good place career-wise with, say, like a record company and a manager, and I was always losing. Yeah, I'd signed to a record company, and the guy that signed would leave. And so you'd be sort of like left for a couple of years with difficult stuff, like, oh, what do we do? And then somebody else would come in and they take over. They wouldn't be passionate because they didn't sign me. So, um, and I sometimes think, what would it have been like if I'd have had great management straight out the side, straight, what would it be like? I mean, Haircut, not, we would have had great management there. Therefore, everything would have been sorted out there. We'd still be together. And then that's just really ruminating, really, about anything, because you're just, there's nothing you can actually do about that. It's just you're just thinking about it. Okay, what would it have been like? But I'd say now that I'm really happy with what's happened because I'm like those records that have been done. When the 90s stuff was released, I was thinking, okay, well, these are really good. This is really good stuff. Um, and I'm really glad. I mean, it's sad that, because the dream was to have the band, Haircut's second album made by, was supposed to be George Martin producing and Jeff Emerick engineering. And as it turned out, it was Jeff Emerick had got in to production more. And I know he was doing production before, but he just produced Imperial Bedroom by Elvis Costello, and it was such an amazing record. And I loved it so much. It made it even more. Just thought, wow, we could sound like this. We could sound like just like this. But I lost control of the. Yeah, it wasn't my band anymore at that particular point. So therefore, just making the album, and I think actually now listening back, uh, without that, because you're only listening from who you are at any point in your life, and there's been times when I've just had regrets if I look at certain situations, but now it's just kind of I go, God, I met Pino Palladino, you know, has turned out to be one of the greatest bass players on earth. um, and I got to work with Jeff Emerick as a wizard in Air Studios, where all those great records were made, like A Man with a Child in His Eyes and Nevermind the Bollocks, um, and The Pretenders, all the great things that I loved. Human League were making Dare, I think, in the other room, I think it was. And, all these great records were made in this one place. And there I was with like Head Wizard, who'd made Penny Lane. And maybe it would have sounded different with Haircut. So sometimes the struggle, yes, it's going on. And I think it's turned out well that we're now a band that 45 years later, we're back and we've just made something and it sounds the way it does. It's just all meant to be. It's odd, it's a bit strange. I don't think there's any other band that has ever split up for 45 years and then come back with a follow-up album.
I mean, often when
That's
friendships end, they don't rekindle.
Yeah.
But
No.
I just wondered, what was the trigger for this to actually rekindle the friendship? Did you sort of suddenly realize, well, why the fuck weren't we friends? You know what I mean? Like, it's so long ago.
Yeah. It's a friendship that it's three of us. That's the friendship. Les Graham and I were friends. I mean, Les and I met first, but we didn't become as friends until we met Graham, and then it wasn't even that until all of our partners left us in the same period. So then we just became really close. And then Rob, our drummer, and who I'd known, who had started the particular sort of band thing in London, especially because it was Rob and I that went to Denmark Street up in Tin Pan Alley to get our instruments to sort of like do it properly. And he decided not to do it and move on. And so it was Les Graham and I just kind of being mates. We were more mates than we were into the music. But when we were together, the three of us, getting this really close relationship, we just were like one together. It was really odd. No, it wasn't odd. It was really heartwarming. We were flung together as three friends. When that happens, when you get really good friends together and you just feel like you're this group of people. So we were a strong group together of people. And it is still there when we're somewhere, when we're in America just lately, or when we get together, it's just it's a recognition that regardless of anything, we have this strong bond, the three of us. And where, you know, even if, because I know that Les was off somewhere hating on me, and Graham was just, you know, just thought I was never going to happen. And, you know, I was doing something, you know, we're all just, but when you meet, there's that thing, there's that thing there, that special thing that we have together. And it's just, you know, even if we're not getting on, it's a special thing that we've got. It's just, we are getting on because we've got this thing together. It's really, it's really good. It's a really good thing. It's a genuine thing that we have, like the three of us together. Yeah. And
We
we're
love,
so completely different. We are completely different, all three of us. But
I mean,
as one, we create this one thing that is quite actually quite useful together. You know, like a fork, a three, you know, three pin.
last year, you had a track come out which was Dynamite, and then today I've been, you know, looking at there's a video for The Unloving Plum, which is such a great title for a track, and there's a comment underneath, and this comment really hit me because I just thought it was brilliant, and it just sort of mentioned the that you've still got, as a band, still got the boyish charm, but with adult sensitive sensibility. And I thought that was it. That is, you haven't lost what you've had. You've got what you
Mm,
had, but you've got a bit more adult sensibility to it. Do you see what I mean?
mm. Well, it'd be very strange if we didn't, wouldn't it? Because it's just, you know, I mean, uh, when we get to, you know, you just got to be who you are. And we've got now, what, so much, twice as much influence uh, in us. There's so much to go through. And then when you start playing it, because that's the thing about a band, you know, you've got your individual tastes, how you want it to be. And then you come together and then they go off on a tangent. And then what happens together is what's happening. Like you might think, okay, we want to be this now. And so you go to be this, and that happens. And that's a band. That's the magic of a band. I'm sure not a lot of people in bands like their own music that they make because they have their own personal tastes. But then it's brought to a band, and then it goes all skew whiff. You know, this isn't. You know, that's the magic of bands, and that's what happens. You know, Blair said it when he, you know, we're in the studio putting down because you know working with Sean Reed as well, who is a band man. You know, Dex is. It's just he's a band musician, and when you're in a room and you're playing, it's he and Sean said, "Ah, I get what haircut's about." He was like watching it happen. When you get in there, the energy of this band starts to happen. Um, and I just know that it's with bands that because sitting there at the end of COVID watching Get Back, I thought that's all bands have to do, isn't it? They have to just be together and turn up to the studio. It's really simple. And as long as they keep doing that, then stuff continues. Um, you know, I was watching that going, God, if only the Beatles had just kept turning up, even if it was once a year, to the studio for a month or two to do this, what we're watching right now. You know, oh, have you got a song? Oh, yeah, you know. And they're chewing it around and then they're re-chewing it around and they're larking around and they're doing what bands do. And and that's what it is. I mean, take Dynamite. Um, I was going through my phone ideas and I had this keyboard thing and it's like somewhere on my man. It's just dynamite, dynamite, you be together for the rest of the night. It sounded a bit like John Cougar Mellencamp, I remember. Oh, dynamite, dynamite, you and me together by satellite. Get a good sleep tonight. Circling sunlight, all those lyrics came at once on this little phone idea. And then, but I knew that it's actually turning up. Doesn't matter where. And I think this particular time it was a rehearsal studio for about £23, I think it was, in £23 for the afternoon in Wickham somewhere. Not glamorous, to do that, but you get together. And Graham wasn't around at that particular time. He was in Cornwall, and it was Blair, Les, and I, and we're just really hot on a hot day, not wanting to be in a rehearsal studio particularly, but going around and playing it over and over and playing it and playing other things, and then coming back to that, and it's pretty disjointed the way it works. And but we're trying to make it work. We're trying to get it to make it be a thing, a haircut thing, through the ideas that I have, and then it is, and then boom, 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 boom. You start smiling with each other. You've got a moment, and when you get moments in pop music, that's when if they move you here in the moment like that, you just go, we just got to capture that moment. So you get it into a song form. I've probably got some lyrics to write, normally the third verse, normally the second, or sometimes it's the whole bloody thing, you know, and sometimes it's not like plum, it was all done completely. But, you go in we went into Sean's and we're putting it down. It's like, okay, we need to capture that thing to be able to color in over it. Because if you can't color in over it, there's nothing to add. You want the least amount of color to go in because it's just there in drums, bass, two guitars, and vocals. If you've got that, and so there we were with Sean. We got that take. It was like that's the one. That grooves, and it's normally where we're doing that, and then we're playing together. And once Les got a bass line in the chorus, it like that's makes the chorus pop. And with Blair, he's just so solid. That's why he's the reason we sound the way we do, authentic. Blair is cool in the gang, and he's our authentic, cool in the gang man. He's played with those people. He was, when it says Stacks on his t-shirt, it's because that's what he grew up on, playing that music with those guys. So, we're the Scrags from South London, and we're around the man, and we're making music, and Blair's going, this is, it's still there. It's there. Like the same thing, just different levels. But, when Elton John says it's that magic, when Bernie sends over something, it's the magic of bands, and it's just always there. And all you've got to do is take the flak when you're getting it together. You know that it's worth it to get in to the studio, to be in that place. Whatever stuff you have, it doesn't really matter, because there's something special about bands that make music together. It's a band thing. It's got that added thing. It's not just turning up to the studio as a solo artist and making it happen in the same way. That there's something about it. I think even lots of famous solo artists have tried to be in bands. Like Bowie tried to have bands and stuff, but it's obviously not destined for him. But he knows the value of anyone about a band, because it's when it's right, it's really good. And I do think that there's something amazing about it. And I know it's there with Haircut. It is. It's just, it was when Les Graham and I were in the room back at the ski club and just playing over and over F major 7 for hours and just smiling while we're doing that, while we're persevering with that. Just keeping the dream alive that one day we would be a band and be on Top of the Pops, or one day we'd be at the Palladium. That's the thing. I mean, that's didn't see that one coming. We're going to be at the Palladium,
Well, Nick Heyward, I know that you are going on tour with Boxing the Compass, and I wish you all the success with this album and with the tour. But I want to end with something which is more on a personal note, because I always think it's really interesting to meet people that have been part of the creativity that has fed my life, which you have. And I really want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, because I think it's such an important thing to do in the
Ah,
world. And particularly in the world that we live in today, which, when you look at Haircut 100 and the songs which have been so positive and uplifting, and we live in a world which is sometimes not uplifting today. So, Nick Heyward, thank you.
well, thank you, Steve. Thank you. And, because it's the creatives are the first ones that are hunted down in a fascist regime. They come for us. We're the first ones that get it.
Oh,
We're
God.
shot in the back of the head somewhere.
Well, on that note, thank you again. All right, Nick.
Yes, peace.
Brilliant.
Peace.
Lovely to meet you. See you again.
Yeah. Cheers, Steve.
Okay, bye. Up there is an interview I recommend. Down there is where you can find all the podcast interviews. And here is where you can connect.